All right, thank you so much, Councilwoman Kubi. Next up, we have Senator Juan Mendez, the Senator for Arizona State Legislature from District 26. Give him a round of applause.
Thank you, everyone. Don't be scared by this. It's big font. But I'm grateful that we're having this march and that you invited me. I didn't get invited to the Science March tomorrow, but I still want to take this serious. And I still think, I find it interesting that there was a little rift in the organizing of this Science March. But I guess I want to start with, I like how it started with just a comment online, that there needs to be a March for Science. We saw that there needs to be a discussion going on, and I guess I want to share a little bit of comments to steer us in a more productive movement and to make sure that we're really inclusive. Because I found it really hard. Like, I can't imagine speaking at a science march and trying to pretend that science is objective and beyond politics. It sounds like a very privileged idea to imagine science has always been on your side, looking out for your interests, like if it was above capitalism or greed. Personally, as an individual, I'm not too quick to stand up and be a cheerleader for capital S science. As an atheist, I feel like science gets put up on a pedestal, and like any other religion, has blind believers, worshipers, and soothsayers. I'm one of those deep green environmentalists, a Bernie Sanders kind of progressive that's wondering if we're all really adhering to the scientific method when as a society we get fat off genetically modified food. It's hard to see the science past the capitalism sometimes.
Yeah.
I am, however, always skeptical and very curious. So I like the lower S science that I wish was more focused on trying to figure out how to live on this planet instead of always being in a hurry to get to outer space to find another rock to inhabit. But like you, I recognize that science is everywhere and affects everyone. And so, as your publicly elected leader, I see it as my responsibility to support and safeguard the scientific community. And I promise to do that. But I have some comments and some constructive criticism that I'd like to share. I want to be able to ask more of us, of the scientific community. First off, we're not being alarmist when we respond to the clear anti-science actions being taken by the Trump administration with these marches. He clearly values the size of a crowd, so we're speaking in a language he understands. Science needs to be out in the public. In his first couple of weeks, there have already been funding freezes and efforts to restrict scientists from communicating their findings from our publicly funded, tax-funded research with us, the public. These actions are absurd, but it's more absurd if you're not alarmed by these clear efforts to not just deny scientific progress, but to literally snuff us out. NASA won't be funded at the levels they need to monitor our progress on Earth, but really like the killing of the systems and the relationships that the Earth depends on. Scientific research doesn't just keep us going for the sake of a higher gross domestic product. It should be helping us make decisions about what kind of prosperity we want, and whether it's going to reach us or just the moneyed interest. We should not allow a minority elected leader with asinine policies to mess up how far we've come. So our first intended outcome for these marches is to put political pressure on the powers that want to deny that the finding of scientific studies have value far beyond how much a corporation can profit off of our publicly funded and researched science. But as citizens, it is also our responsibility to make sure science doesn't get too far ahead of us and where we want to go. We have to remind ourselves that knowledge is a weapon, and who and how they're talking matters. As science majors, or as friends of science majors, it's your responsibility to learn to critique our unquestioned assumptions and systems of power. And please, if we really value science, we always have to place what you study or what you do in a shared social context, and never in some removed bubble. We have to help our fellow scientists to understand and remember who you are influences what you study and what you do with those studies. We worry about money driving research in the STEM field, but researcher bias is just as a valid and worrisome of an issue. And we have to learn how to talk in context of who is listening and what our ultimate goal is.
That's right.
If we're trying to get the public on board, we can't cheerlead science and then in the very next privileged breath, cheerlead class domination, Western imperialism, or speciesism. We can't afford any longer to hold up science as if it were truly objective, as if ideas were innocent, as if they don't serve one interest over another. Of course, we want to remain the kind of objective that means telling the truth as we see it and not hiding information that might not further our point of view or privileged position. But we lose people, the very same people we need on our side, when we talk about the kind of objectivity that means pretending that ideas, yes, even scientific ideas, don't play a part in the social struggles that we all experience, but we all experience them differently. Science needs intersectionality. We can't talk or think like if science wasn't already taking sides in these everyday struggles that people find themselves stuck in with no relation to their actions. I'm almost done. But it's dangerous, and it can't be very scientific to pretend that science is neutral when the world is already moving in certain directions. We don't learn, live, or work inside bubbles, and it's a privilege science can't afford to have anymore. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, we're still at school, so I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and put on your John Rawls veil of ignorance, really quick, and try it out for a second, right? It's a philosophical thought experiment. When you open your eyes, you could be anyone else, even a poor indigenous woman or a person of color. You're supposed to use the veil of ignorance to understand if something is just or unjust. So as you have this veil of ignorance on and you forget who you are, try and imagine that you could be anybody else. I want you to try and recognize the many issues about which science and scientists as a group have largely remained silent on. And this is why we're losing people, right? The attacks on black and brown lives, the oil pipelines and freeways through indigenous lands, the epidemic levels of sexual harassment and assault. But after we're done with this march, we have to all go look at the quilt on the campus, the monument quilt. ADA access in our communities, immigration policy, our lack of clean water in cities and schools, right? 2 of us, Tempe schools in the lower economic community are the only ones with lead problems right now. Poverty wages, LGBTQ rights, and mass shootings. These are all scientific issues. The problem is science tries to be neutral when wealth and power are already distributed in certain ways, right? So, okay, you can open your eyes now. And if you use the veil of ignorance to imagine you could be someone else, you have an understanding of what it might feel like to hear science pretend it's neutral while we're in the middle of so many problems. When science pretends to be neutral, it's like asking poor people of color to accept the way things are, as if that's how it's supposed to be. When science tries to pretend it's outside of politics, it just comes off like it's always supported historical discrimination. And it's gonna be uncomfortable, and it's gonna be hard for scientists, but we need the scientists to be vocal. I want to quote James Baldwin. He says, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." And the scientific community really needs to understand that. They need to be vocal and active in helping all of us work to unlearn our problematic past and present so that science works for the prosperity of all of us. We can't allow others to pretend that science is apolitical. Science and politics are clearly related. Science is not universal, inclusive, nonpartisan, apolitical, agender, aracial, or aideological. Science is the pursuit of knowledge. Knowledge is power, and power is politics. Science is just politics. It's everywhere and it affects everyone. We have to push this science community. We have to take responsibility for the science community and carry on this conversation of the role of science in our society beyond these protests. Only then will more people value science in a way that brings prosperity for all of us and not just a privileged few.